Hi, this is Ignacio with North Star Senior Advisors, and thank you for joining us for another North Star Presents. I'm pretty excited today. We are kicking off our monthly series around mental health. I have here joining me April Boykin. I'll let her introduce herself here in a second. Really quick about us. We are a senior placement company. We've been here in Central Florida about almost 6 years. We help seniors and families transition to assisted living and memory care options as a complimentary service. So April, glad to have you here today. For those that didn't watch last month, we started off a conversation around mental health. We introduced April Services and her company, and we really thought it'd be worthwhile to kind of initiate a monthly series going over different topics, okay? Today's topic for June is going to be managing depression. So a lot of stuff's going on. April, I've talked enough. I'll kick it over to you. I'll let you introduce yourself and kick us off.
Hi, I'm April Boykin with Counseling Resource Services. We are an in-home mental health company that really focuses on aged and disabled, so Medicare age population, but we do work with a wide variety of families and individuals and caregivers, actually. So we provide in-home, and right now we're doing telehealth services also. So the topic this month is depression, and I don't think that there could be a more perfect topic to start with, really because during this time, many of us are experiencing the same symptoms or the same experiences that our aged and disabled patients experience, because we are being limited in our access to our community, to our friends, and to our families, and even work-wise, we are limited in what we can do. And so we want to talk a little bit about what depression is, what causes it, and maybe some of the solutions, certainly some of the solutions to help us manage depression day to day.
Excellent.
Okay, so just to talk about what is depression. Depression is a really individual experience, and it can be from mild symptoms of lack of interest in something you used to want to do, feelings of sadness, feelings of emptiness or loneliness, all the way to the chronic suicidal ideation and gestures. And so it can be, it's a large continuum, and we can fall anywhere in there. Can be complicated grief, it can be sadness, it comes from the idea that you eat too much or you don't eat enough. Symptoms can include sleeping too much or not enough, not wanting to do things that you used to do, lacking motivation, not wanting to be around people, shutting down, not getting out of bed. We all have very individual symptoms, but basically for ourselves, it's important to know that if we don't feel well, if we feel sad and depressed, it's okay to get help. You don't have to wait until you're so chronic and stuck in bed and can't do anything before you get help. You can begin working on symptoms of depression as soon as you feel them or experience them.
And those are good points, April. I know we talked about this a little bit before. Depression is subjective to some degree, right? I mean, a lot of folks may experience these symptoms and not necessarily show it, but they're feeling it. So they live their lives, at least from an external perspective, it looks like they're fine. They have everything they need. Why should you be depressed, right? But deep down inside of their core, there is something going on that is maybe driving that depression. It could be various factors. I would agree with you that, seeking treatment as soon as it's recognized, I think it's important. And, a lot of people let it go, and it can turn into, and you're the expert, I'll let you dive into what that could potentially be if you let it go, how it can compound into other things if you don't address it, right?
Well, it's really interesting you say that. So it can become chronic, right? Depression can become chronic, and you may not see it in someone because they have everything in their life that they should want, but they're experiencing chronic stress, or they have chronic emptiness. And so because they have those feelings, they don't get enjoyment out of the things that they do have. It becomes more functional. So you can absolutely be functional and be depressed because you're not finding quality of life. You're not enjoying life or valuing your own life. You feel a lack of motivation or a lack of connection. And it's important to remember that for depression, there are a lot of causes, and some of that is genetic. Some of that is how our brains are wired. And there may be a long family history of that. For some of this, it is a high level of stress. So having chronic stress or having ongoing stress can change the chemicals in our brain so that we have less serotonin, we have less enjoyment of life, that we are not producing the chemicals that we need in our brain to feel good. You can also have it because of trauma. So whether you're a soldier who has PTSD or someone who has experienced trauma or chronic trauma, your brain doesn't have the chemicals it needs to be able to manage stress. You can also have it as a part of medical issues. So many of our patients have the onset of a medical issue, which changes their ability to connect, to get out, to move. And their brain's not making the same level of serotonin or many other chemicals. And so they begin to feel depressed. And there are certain medications that can create that. So there are many causes of depression. But what's important to know is that about 80% of people with depression can actually cure the depression. And 100% of the people who have depression can feel better by actively addressing what's going on. And I hear all the time with patients who have heart disease or lung disease, well, depression's part of what you get, and so there's nothing we can do. And that is never true. Depression is not a part of aging. It's a normal part of life that can be treated and improved for everybody.
Good, excellent. Now, it's interesting because it appears that, depression can come from different things we talked about. Internally, it could be the chemical imbalance that's going on, and that could be a variety of reasons, genetics to, whatever it may be, right? And then you have the external factors. You gave the example about a soldier, a veteran here, I can understand. And those that have been in combat, there's a lot of that PTSD stuff too, which is, completely a little, I think, more exacerbating. But it makes sense to me that it could be, again, internally driven by the chemicals, and then the external factors, and maybe both. So my question to you is, would you say it's somewhat like a muscle, meaning that everybody's a little different in terms of their vulnerability to depression? Are more people prone to being depressed with various factors than others? And how would you define that?
That's a really good complicated question, right? Because it is very complicated for the individual. So if you are already genetically predisposed, and then you have trauma, and then you have chronic stress, you're going to have a longer term level of depression than someone who has a one-time traumatic experience, a death or a loss. And so it becomes complicated, just like they talk about complicated grief, which is grief that, you have multiple losses, or because of the loss, you lose everything. You lose your connection to the world, so depression can be complicated based on the life experiences. And some people have many losses. Some people have trauma after trauma after trauma. And so they are more likely to have chronic grief, chronic sadness, chronic depression. So it's important to learn those skills to prevent depression, as well as it is to manage depression.
Okay, thank you for that. So let's take, for example, today's reality, which, is pretty unfortunate, everything that's going on. We know with, the last 90 days has been pretty insane in terms of how the world has kind of flipped upside down with the pandemic, and it's had direct and indirect impact on a lot of folks, caregivers, seniors themselves, even us within this industry, and how we accommodate those that we try to help, right? What are your thoughts, maybe some tips for those that are watching that are within the industry, or maybe caring from somebody, maybe how they can pick up on signs and symptoms of depression themselves, and maybe some solutions on how they can tackle this, I don't want to say disease, but it is a disease, right? I mean, it can be diagnosed, so.
Well, it's a pandemic, and the thing is that it's here to stay for a while at least. And so we, as people in the healthcare industry, our lives have been turned upside down. So I want to make sure that I say, I'm talking about this for ourselves as well as the clients and patients that we serve, because depression can get any of us. For many of us, we have had to learn whole new ways of operating our businesses and to get out there and reach our clients that we can't actually physically reach. And that really has changed and put many of us in that fight or flight state where we are overly anxious and overly depressed and overly on alert. And so it's important to remember that we start by taking care of ourselves, that we are doing good self-care. And so all the skills that I'm going to talk about are important for us. And we need to put on our own mask, right? On the airplane, that analogy, put on your mask first before you take care of anybody else. Well, we need to take care of ourselves first so that we can be present for our clients. So to start with, we need to make sure that we are taking downtime, that we are taking time off to shut the world around us out. And that means not answering the phone, not answering emails, really tuning out from the constant stress that is going on around us, right? And so we got to build that in every day, but certainly taking those time. Many of our vacations have been, thrown out the window, and we're not going on vacation. And so we have that tendency to want to keep working. We need to shut that down, and we need to actually take time off. Some other tips for ourselves is that we build a routine, right? So our routine may be different, and we can tell our patients the same thing. Our routines may be different, but we really need to put a routine in place that involves self-care and that we're doing something every day. So maybe it's a 20-minute walk. People should be exercising, but not everybody does. But everybody can take a 10 or 15-minute walk to get your body moving, because when you get your body moving, you get your brain chemistry moving. You're getting your brain to produce more serotonin. It's good for you. When you put your feet on the ground and you go outside and you spend 10 minutes outside, you're getting vitamin D, you're getting connected to the earth. All of those things are really important in stopping depression, the onset of depression, or managing it if you're feeling it, right? The other thing is we've got to really look at what we're putting into our brains. So whether it's, chronic watching of TV and news, if we're watching, murder mysteries and we're watching high chaos TV, ER dramas, things like that, all of that creates a heightened sense of alarm in ourselves. And we don't need that. We need to cut that out for now. We need to be watching, Hallmark lovey, awful, shows that there's always a happy ending and no one, falls apart. And so we need to really redirect what we're taking in so that we don't overwhelm our systems, because we'll get there and we'll stay there, right? So for many of us, we're not having the connections that we used to. We're not going to church, or we're not going, getting together with friends for, happy hour, or we're not doing, day trips with our families. And so you have to also find new ways to have connections. When we went into this pandemic, we had a lot of people who said, we'll wait until it's over before we have counseling again. That doesn't work. People can't be shut in their homes or shut in their ALFs without a connection to people outside of them. So after about 30 days, a lot of the people came back on board for counseling, even though it was over the telephone. Right.
Yeah, that makes sense too. You can't really cut off a lot of access to, what's essential, obviously, even though because then it falls into, what's better, or are you doing more harm than anything, right? So we've talked about that, and we know that's unfortunately a harsh reality, and hopefully that'll continue to evolve and make sense where we can safely engage with those that are locked down and all that. Well, these are great solutions and tips, April. And I would think it can be a little tougher, kind of like harder said than done, right? So if you're already into this routine where you're maybe laying around, you're watching a lot of the news, breaking away from that can be tough, So any tips on how to just recognize, okay, how to reflect and say, okay, I have to do something. I got to go for that walk. I got to turn the news off because all this is building up inside and it's really affecting me. Maybe how can you recognize it? Because when you live in your own reality, it's kind of hard, sometimes for them to to kind of see, reflect, and take action. Any thoughts around that?
Sure. So the first thing I start with is I ask people to do a technology detox and to turn it off for 2 days. 2 days of no TV. And that means no Netflix, no listen to music or, do something else. But for 2 days, if you disconnect from the TV, you can do a total reset on how you get back into getting your news feed. I encourage people to read the news instead of watch the news. That's a big difference. You can still read the news whether you get it paper or you get it electronically, but just turning off the TV for 2 days can have a huge impact on what you're doing and what you're experiencing. The other thing that I encourage people to do is a gratitude list. So as we are feeling sad, we've got to watch our thoughts, because our thoughts will lead us down a rabbit hole that is all the negative. We'll begin to ruminate and get stuck on thinking about what's wrong instead of what's right. And I encourage people to put a gratitude list either on paper or on their phones of all the things that make life worth living. So oftentimes we think, I'll be happy when this happens or that happens. And the reality is if you wait till you're the right size, or you have the right house or the right job or the right amount of money in your bank account, that may never happen. And you've missed out on all this life to enjoy. And so I encourage people to make a list of, the things that make them happy. So maybe it's their electric toothbrush that makes them feel like they just went to the dentist, or it's the brisket that they made with Gruyere cheese, or it's the park by their house where they can go and sit in peace by the lake. There are so many things. And so I encourage people to make a gratitude list. And anytime their brain begins to fill up with negative thoughts, pull out that gratitude list and read it until those negative thoughts are replaced with those that make you happy, that make you feel good. So those are some of the ways to begin to change. The other thing I will tell you is anytime you have a negative thought, if you use what's called a neurovascular hold, and those are the acupressure techniques that many people who've been in my classes see me do all the time. If you put your hand on your forehead and the other on the occiput on the back, right? And you have those negative thoughts, just allow them to come and just hold and breathe in and out through your nose, and just to let those negative thoughts until they pass. And they will, if you just hold your head, and it really will make you feel better about those negative thoughts. It'll allow them to leave your body instead of being stuck in your mind.
Wow, those are excellent tips, April. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's extremely useful. The detox makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And the gratitude list, I think that's awesome. I think it's really good for folks to reflect. I think it's a good tool for sure. April, thank you so much for sharing this. Folks, we're going to be kicking off another topic next month for July. As a matter of fact, we'll tell you now, it's going to be around managing anxiety. So April will jump on again. You'll see this in July, and it'll be us speaking about, April speaking about how to really manage anxiety, which can be, tied to a lot of other stuff as well. Right. So looking forward to that. If you have any questions, comments, let us know, folks. If you'd like to see additional topics, let us know. I'm going to share April's information out here, her company. You can reach her. She could be a phenomenal resource for you, your loved ones, your community, your company, whatever. She's here to help, and so are we. So thank you for watching today. And April, thanks again for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.